The wedding was supposed to be the pinnacle of my life, the culmination of everything I had built. The moment I married into Ava Drayton's world of high society. I thought I'd be proud. I thought I'd finally fit in. But there, in the middle of the ceremony, surrounded by 204 guests, I realized I never would. Ava stood beside me in her pristine white dress, the daughter of a dynasty that spanned generations. Her father, Harrison Gray, had been nothing but cordial to me in public, a hand on my back, a knowing nod. But tonight the mask slipped. His speech, meant to be a toast to love, turned into something far more sinister. "Look at her," he said, nodding toward my mother, who was seated quietly a few rows behind. "That's not a mother. That's a mistake in a dress." The words sliced through the room like a blade. The guests chuckled, a soft laugh from Ava. It echoed loud in my ears. I wanted to believe this was a bad joke, a misunderstanding. I looked at my mother, Patricia Howell, a woman who worked 3 jobs, who never missed a parent-teacher conference, even when I thought she'd collapse from exhaustion. A woman who gave everything she had to raise me. And here they were, mocking her. I felt her hand tighten around mine, but she didn't say a word. She never did. She wasn't the type to make a scene. But I could see the slight tremor in her fingers, the way her smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. I felt the weight of it, her dignity crushed under the weight of their laughter. I didn't know how long I sat there, hearing nothing but that awful sound. It was a familiar ache, like something I had buried deep, something I had never allowed myself to feel. The isolation, the shame. I could feel the eyes of the room on me. I was supposed to smile, to laugh along with the rest of them, but I couldn't. I didn't. And for the first time, I hated the life I had built. I hated the empire that had surrounded me with its polished walls and empty promises. It wasn't mine, it was never mine. And in that moment, I understood. The whole room wasn't just watching a wedding. They were watching a performance. A carefully curated show to cement the legacy of the Drayton family. I was just a player in it, and my mother was nothing more than an accessory, a background piece in their perfect life. Without thinking, I stood up. The noise of the guests, the clinking of champagne glasses, the soft murmurs, they all faded as I pushed my chair back and looked at Ava. Her eyes were wide, confused. "We're leaving," I said, my voice steady though my hands shook. My eyes never left hers. Ava's lips parted as if to say something, but I didn't wait. I turned to my mother, holding out my hand. She looked at me, eyes soft with concern. She didn't move for a second, like she was afraid if she left, it would all fall apart. But then she took my hand. We walked out. As we passed the door, I heard whispers behind us. Someone gasped. Another dropped their glass. But I didn't care. The night was over before it had even started. I'd ruined it. I'd destroyed everything. But as I stepped into the cool air outside, something twisted inside me. This was only the beginning. Everything I had been building, everything I had sacrificed for, it was all about to unravel. They thought they had won. They thought they could mock my mother and get away with it. They had no idea what was coming next. I couldn't let them turn my life, my mother's life, into a joke. Not anymore. As we drove away from the North Crest estate, I felt the weight of the future pressing against me. I didn't know what I was about to do, but I knew this. The game had just begun. The air was thick, suffocating, as we drove away from the estate. I could feel the tension rolling off my mother in waves, but she didn't say a word. She never did. There was something about her quiet strength, her ability to carry the weight of the world without ever asking for anything in return, that made me both admire and hate her. I never wanted to be the one to make her feel small. But tonight, everything felt smaller than I ever imagined. When the door slammed shut behind us at the North Crest estate, it felt like an entire life had been closed off. I was supposed to feel a sense of relief, like I had just freed myself from a cage. But there was only an emptiness gnawing at the back of my mind. What had just happened? Why did I feel so exposed? Every move I had made up until now had been toward building something, a future, a legacy, something that mattered. And now, It was all gone. The money, the power, the woman I was supposed to marry. It was all shattered with one sentence. As the limo sped down the dark streets, my thoughts raced. That's not a mother. That's a mistaken address. The words echoed in my head like a drumbeat, louder with every passing second. I hadn't imagined it. It wasn't just some passing comment. It was a statement, deliberate and cold, meant to degrade my mother in front of the world. I never thought I'd see the day. My mother finally spoke, her voice soft, almost as if she was talking to herself. You did the right thing, Victor. But I know what this will cost you. I clenched my jaw. She didn't have to say it. I could feel it, the weight of the consequences already pressing down on me. My relationship with Ava, everything I had worked so hard to build, was gone in an instant. But I couldn't bring myself to regret it. Not now. Not after seeing my mother, the woman who sacrificed so much for me, humiliated like that. A sudden ringing shattered the silence. It was my phone. The name on the screen made my stomach twist. Ava. I stared at the screen, hesitating. She'd been nothing but a shadow in my life these past few weeks, and now, the woman I had once loved was part of the very system I was fighting against. Was she still on my side? Or was she a pawn in her father's game? I answered. Victor! Her voice was strained thin. We need to talk. Please. I don't know what just happened, but it's not what you think. I let her words hang there. The silence stretched, the hum of the car filling the gap. I don't know if we can fix this, I finally said, my voice cold, too cold. You laughed. You stood there and laughed as my mother was torn apart. You're as much a part of this as they are. I could hear her breath catch on the other end of the line. Victor. No, I cut her off. Don't try to explain it. I don't need your explanation. The woman I was about to marry doesn't mock my mother in front of hundreds of people. You think you can come back from this? Think again. I hung up. The tension in the limo was suffocating. I looked at my mother, who sat across from me, her hands folded in her lap. She didn't say anything. She never did. It wasn't just the betrayal from Ava and her family. It was the realization that I had built my entire life on a lie. My success, the empire I had worked so hard to create, was nothing more than a facade. My father, the man I had trusted, had been pulling the strings behind the scenes. And Ava, the woman I thought I could spend my life with, had been playing me from the start. They had all been using me, and I was too blind to see it. A few minutes later, the limo pulled into the driveway of my apartment. The lights of the city flickered in the distance, casting long shadows across the empty street. As I stepped out of the car, the cold night air bit at my skin. My mother didn't get out with me. She just stayed in the car, watching me through the tinted windows. I turned to face her. Are you coming inside? She shook her head. I'm fine. Go take care of what needs to be done. I'll be here. I hesitated for a moment, but then I nodded and walked inside. The silence in the apartment was deafening. I walked over to my desk, opened the drawer, and pulled out the folder that had been haunting me since I left the estate. Inside, there was the evidence, contracts, emails, financial transactions. It was all there. The truth I had been running from. I began to sort through the documents, each page confirming the worst of what I had suspected. Harrison Gray, Ava's father, had been secretly negotiating to buy out my family's company for years. But it wasn't just business. It was personal. My father had been in on it all along, working with Gray to orchestrate my downfall. I slammed the folder shut, frustration and anger boiling inside me. I needed to act. But before I could think of my next move, the phone rang again. This time it was a blocked number. I hesitated, but answered anyway. Victor, a voice on the other end said, a voice I didn't recognize. You don't know me, but you need to listen closely. I've been watching you, and I have information that can bring down Aldrich Group and your father. I'm ready to help, but you need to meet me. Tonight. I felt my heart skip a beat. The voice was calm, collected. It wasn't a prank. It was real. Who are you? I asked, the words coming out too fast. A friend, for now. If you want the truth, you'll meet me. Otherwise, you'll just be another pawn in a game you never chose to play. It's your choice. The line went dead. I stood frozen, the weight of the conversation settling over me. A new ally? Or a trap? I didn't have time to think. I grabbed my coat, knowing that the next few hours could either destroy me or give me the chance to destroy them. I'm coming for everything. I'm coming for you all. I didn't sleep that night. The events of the wedding, the cruel words, the sudden shift in my life, it felt like a train had slammed into me, leaving nothing but a wreckage of plans and dreams I wasn't sure I wanted anymore. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from people who didn't matter, but I ignored them. The only voice I could hear now was my own, echoing inside my head. I'm not going to let them get away with this. It wasn't about revenge. Not entirely. This was about something deeper. Dignity. The lies I'd lived with. The people who thought they could tear down the very foundation of my life with one careless, venomous comment. I had to take back control. But where do you start when your entire world is built on manipulation and deceit? The message had been clear. I needed to meet someone. Someone who had information that could tear Aldridge Group apart. My first instinct was to run, to hide in the shadows and hope that everything would just blow over. But that wasn't an option anymore. They had already crossed a line. And in this game, the only way to win is to fight fire with fire. I met the mysterious source in a rundown diner, away from the eyes of the city. It wasn't a place I would have chosen, but I wasn't here for comfort. The fluorescent lights above flickered intermittently, and the smell of stale coffee hung in the air. It felt wrong, like a bad omen. The person waiting for me was nothing like I expected. A man in his mid-30s with unkempt hair and a ragged jacket, sitting at the corner booth, a cup of coffee untouched in front of him. His eyes were dark, calculating, as if he knew exactly how far this was going to go. He looked up when I slid into the seat across from him. "You're Victor Howell," he said, his voice rough, as if he'd been smoking for years. "The man who's about to burn everything down, huh?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I studied him, trying to gauge whether this was an ally or a trap. It could be either. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice low. He smiled faintly, leaning in. "I'm someone who knows exactly what Aldridge Group is up to, and I'm here to offer you a chance to take them down, if you're ready to listen." I had no time for games. I leaned forward, staring at him. "Talk fast." The man glanced around the diner, making sure no one was watching. He tapped the side of his coffee cup. "They're building something. Something big. But it's not just about business anymore, Victor. It's personal. Your father's been in deep with them for years, and not just for power. For something darker." My stomach churned. I wanted to trust this man, but something about the way he spoke felt rehearsed. Too deliberate. "What exactly are you talking about?" "Your father and Harrison Gray aren't just business partners. They've been laundering money through a shell company that's been feeding into a private account, an account that has more than just financials in it." His eyes locked onto mine. "It has dirt, the kind of dirt that could take down not just your father, but the entire Aldridge empire." I felt my pulse quicken. This was it, the moment when everything changed. "What kind of dirt?" I asked, unable to hide the desperation in my voice. The man smirked, pulling out a folded piece of paper from his jacket and sliding it across the table. "These documents will tell you everything. Proof that your father's been hiding things from you. Big things. Things you'll need if you want to destroy him. And Gray, before they do the same to you." I reached for the documents, but before I could touch them, a loud crash echoed from the back of the diner. We both froze. The door slammed open, and a figure stepped inside, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a leather jacket. The moment I saw him, a wave of recognition hit me. It was Lucas Blackwell, my old business partner, the same man I thought I could trust. My blood ran cold. How had he found me? Isn't this cozy? Lucas's voice was dripping with sarcasm as he walked toward our booth. Victor Howell, sitting here with the very man who's about to take down your father. You didn't think I'd find out, did you? I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. What are you doing here? He smiled, taking a slow step forward. Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing. You're making a lot of noise, Victor. I thought you were smarter than this. Did you really think you could pull this off alone? I could feel my chest tightening, my mind racing. How much did he know? How much had he been involved in? The man I'd been talking to didn't flinch. He didn't seem scared, but his hand subtly slid the documents behind him, out of sight. Get out of here, Lucas, I said through gritted teeth. This is none of your business. Lucas laughed, his eyes flicking toward the door. Oh, I beg to differ. This is exactly my business. And what makes you think your little plan is going to work? You really think this man is going to help you? He's just as much a pawn as you are. I reached into my jacket, my hand brushing against the cold steel of my gun. I didn't pull it out, but the thought of it was enough to give me the clarity I needed. I wasn't going to let Lucas, or anyone else, control this. Not anymore. Take a seat, Lucas. This is about to get interesting. Suddenly, everything felt like it was spinning out of control. The walls were closing in, and I didn't know who I could trust anymore. But there was no turning back. Lucas smirked, but before he could say another word, I heard the sound of sirens in the distance. They were getting closer. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I looked from Lucas to the mysterious man sitting across from me. Who was going to make the first move? The door to the diner creaked open, and I knew in that moment I was no longer playing by anyone's rules. It was my move. The night stretched on, but I couldn't sleep. I walked through my apartment, pacing like a caged animal. The phone call, the threat, everything was spinning out of control. Lucas Blackwell had shown up at the diner like he owned the place, like he had everything figured out, but what did he know? How deep did this go? Was I really playing the game with people I couldn't trust? Or was I the one being used? Don't let them make you feel small. My mother's words echoed in my head. She'd always said that, whenever someone tried to push her down, she stood taller. I couldn't let them do it to me. Not to her, not to anyone. I grabbed my coat and left the apartment. I wasn't going to sit here, waiting for something to happen. I had to be the one making the moves. The man who had called me earlier said he could help me bring down Aldrich Group, and I wasn't about to let that slip away. The streets of Chicago were cold, empty. The city felt almost eerie in the dark, the kind of silence you feel when everyone is waiting for something to happen. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The man had told me to meet him at a nondescript office building downtown. When I arrived, the lobby was lit in harsh fluorescent lights, the kind that made the space feel sterile and cold. I walked up to the receptionist, who barely glanced at me as I gave her the name of the man I was meeting. She pointed me toward the elevator. The door slid open, and I stepped inside, the quiet hum of the elevator filling the empty space. My reflection in the glass was all I could focus on. Am I doing the right thing? I didn't have time to dwell. The elevator pinged, and the doors slid open to a narrow hallway. I turned down the hall, each step echoing too loudly against the concrete floors. The door at the end was ajar, and I could see a figure inside. The man from the diner. But this time he wasn't alone. There was someone else sitting at the table, facing away from me, hidden in the shadows. My heart skipped a beat. Who else was involved in this? I walked in, and the man looked up, his cold eyes meeting mine. I see you're finally here, he said, his voice low and steady. Good. We don't have much time. I sat across from him, my fingers tapping impatiently on the table. What's going on? What do you want from me? He smiled faintly, a knowing look in his eyes. We're on the same side, Victor. I'm here to help you expose Aldrich Group. Your father and Harrison Gray are too deep in this. I'm not the only one who knows what's going on. But I've got the proof, the documents that will bring everything crashing down. I leaned in, gripping the edge of the table. What kind of proof? He slid a folder across the table. I opened it, the contents revealing a set of financial records. Payments made to companies that didn't exist, tax filings, invoices that led nowhere. It all looked legitimate at first glance, but the patterns were there, subtle like a breadcrumb trail. There's more, the man said. What you see here is just the beginning. They've been siphoning money off the books for years, and now they're about to make their biggest move yet. I didn't say anything. I felt the weight of the evidence in front of me, and the realization that the game I'd been playing was far more dangerous than I had imagined. I stared at the documents, trying to piece together the puzzle. You're telling me my father is involved in this? That everything I've been working for, everything I believed in, is built on lies? The man nodded. It's worse than that. This isn't just about money. It's about control. Your father and Gray were planning to sell off Aldridge's assets, strip everything clean, and leave nothing but the shell of what it once was. I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. This is insane. I need to see the full picture. I can't just take your word for it. He leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. You'll see it all in time. But first, you need to decide, are you in? Because once you take this step, there's no turning back. I could feel the tension building in the room, suffocating. My mind raced, but there was no time to waste. The pieces were falling into place, and I had to make a choice. I was already in too deep, but this was a level I hadn't prepared for. Just as I opened my mouth to speak, the door behind us creaked. Someone was watching us. I turned quickly, but it was too late. The figure from the shadows had moved. You shouldn't have come here, Victor, a voice said from the doorway. It was familiar. Too familiar. Lucas Blackwell. He stepped into the room, a sinister grin on his face. Did you really think you could take down Aldridge on your own? He asked, his tone dripping with mockery. You've been playing checkers when you should have been playing chess. The man across from me stood, but I could tell from his posture he wasn't surprised. You knew, I said. It wasn't a question. You should have known, Lucas replied, his voice smooth, confident. You're not the only one who's been making moves behind the scenes. You're just a pawn in a much bigger game. My heart raced. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to get out before it was too late. But I couldn't. Not now. Not when the truth was within reach. Lucas's smile grew wider. I'm afraid you've miscalculated, Victor. It's already too late for you. You don't have the power to stop this. But I was done playing their game. The documents, the money, the power. I wasn't going to back down. I didn't care who Lucas was or what he thought he knew. I was going to end this no matter the cost. I don't need your approval, Lucas, I said coldly. I'll burn it all down, starting with you. The room went silent. Then the unexpected happened. The man across from me pulled a gun from under the table and pointed it directly at Lucas. And the world in that instant seemed to stop. The gun was cold in the dimly lit room, the sound of it clicking into place like the final chord in a twisted symphony. I hadn't expected this. The man across from me, the one who had seemed like an ally just moments ago, now held all the cards. Lucas Blackwell's mocking grin hadn't disappeared, but the tension in the air was palpable. I think you're making a mistake, Lucas said, his voice barely a whisper. He stepped back slowly, his eyes never leaving the barrel of the gun. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Everything inside me was screaming to run, but my legs were frozen, locked in place by the weight of the decision I had to make. My mind raced. This was no longer about Aldridge Group or the documents. The stakes were now my life. You think you can walk into this mess and take control? Lucas continued, his tone low, almost too calm. This is bigger than you, Victor. Bigger than any of us. You have no idea what you're up against. You're right, I said, my voice steady, surprising even myself. I don't, but I'm about to find out. The man with the gun, Nolan, nodded slowly, as if he'd heard this kind of talk before. He was a shadow of a man, his face unreadable. He was the kind of person who worked in silence, who watched from the edges, waiting for the right moment to strike. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. The only sound was the hum of the fluorescent lights above us, buzzing like a warning. I felt a chill run down my spine. Something was off. The longer I stared at Nolan, the more it became clear. He wasn't just another pawn in this game. He was the one pulling the strings. "You think it's over, don't you?" I said, trying to keep my voice calm, but the rising anger made it crack. "You think you've won because you're holding a gun to my head. But this is just the beginning." Lucas smirked, stepping toward me with that same arrogance that had always irked me. "You think so? You're too late. Everything is already in motion. You can't stop it now." I was about to respond, but then the door to the room slammed open. A man in a black suit, a stranger to me, stepped inside. He had the look of someone who knew exactly how to control a room. Behind him, the soft tap of footsteps echoed. 2 more men, silent, lethal. They didn't have guns. They didn't need them. "What the hell is this?" I said, my pulse racing, but my voice was still steady. "Mr. Hale," the man in the suit said, his voice cold and authoritative. "I think you're under the wrong impression." The way he said my name sent a chill through me. It was a sound of someone who knew everything. Someone who had been watching me from the moment I'd stepped into this mess. I looked around at the others, trying to process what was happening. "You've been asking too many questions, Victor," the man continued, "and it's getting dangerous." My brain was struggling to catch up with the situation. Who was this man? How did he know so much about me? "I think you've misunderstood," I said, my hand inching toward my jacket, where I knew the gun I'd hidden was waiting. But before I could make a move, the man in the suit held up a hand, and the room went silent again. "Enough," he said, as if I were a child being scolded. "You've been playing a game, but you failed to realize that it's not a game at all. This is business, the Aldridge business." There was no warmth in his voice, no empathy, just a cold, calculated tone that sent a shiver down my spine. My father's legacy. Everything I thought I knew about my family, my life, it was all slipping through my fingers. "Who the hell are you?" I snapped, taking a step forward. "And what's your involvement in all of this?" The man smiled, but it wasn't a smile that reassured me. It was the kind of smile someone wears when they're about to deliver the worst news you've ever heard. "I'm the person who makes sure everything runs smoothly," he said. "I'm the one who cleans up after people like you." He looked at Lucas, then back at me. "You're in over your head. This isn't something you can fix with a few documents and a power play. This is real. This is life or death." The air thickened with tension as I realized the truth. There was no escape. "I thought you understood the rules of the game," the man continued, "but you've been playing by your own. Now it's time for you to learn how this really works." I glanced around the room. Lucas was silent, watching me with amusement. Nolan's gun never wavered, but I could tell he was on edge, uncertain. The men in suits were professional, but there was something unsettling about them. They had the look of people who had played this game 1,000 times and won every time. "You're not going to win," I said, the words feeling strange as they left my mouth. "Not this time." "We'll see about that," the man replied coldly. I took a breath, trying to steady myself. My mind was racing. I needed a way out, a way to turn the tables. But I knew that time was running out. Suddenly, Nolan stepped forward, his gun aimed directly at me. "Your move," he said. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed for my phone, the only thing that could save me now. But as my fingers brushed the screen, everything went black, and the room exploded into chaos. What just happened? I didn't know, but I was about to find out. The room was eerily quiet, the hum of fluorescent lights above cutting through the tense silence. I stood there, my hand trembling slightly as I held the stack of documents. It felt like a lifetime ago when I had walked into this office, hopeful, ready to claim my inheritance, to take back what was rightfully mine. But now everything had changed, and nothing would ever be the same again. The air was thick with regret, betrayal, and something deeper, something darker. I glanced at the people around me, Lucas, Blackwell, Nolan, even those silent figures in the shadows. They all wore masks, but I could see the fear in their eyes just below the surface. The walls were closing in, and they knew it. I had them. The truth was no longer just a weapon. It was a ticking time bomb. I looked back at the files in my hands, the papers that had already begun to shift the balance of power in this game of deception. My father's empire was crumbling under the weight of their lies. The secrets, the hidden deals, the web of corruption, it all came to light in these very pages. And it was more than just a business deal gone wrong. It was about family. My family. I felt the sting of my father's betrayal more than I had expected. Growing up, I had always admired him, looked up to him, believed in the righteousness of his actions. But the truth was a bitter pill. My father had been a part of it all. The deception, the manipulation. He had used my mother's legacy as a pawn in his quest for power. He had treated her like an accessory. And now, I was the one who had to undo all of it. I had to clean up the mess they had left behind. As I stepped forward, the tension in the room thickened. Lucas Blackwell's smirk faltered for just a second. His confidence was slipping. I could see it now, the cracks in the armor, the fear beneath the bravado. Nolan, too, was shifting nervously, his hand hovering over the gun. But I knew he wouldn't make the first move. He was waiting. They all were, waiting for me to blink. But I didn't blink. I slammed the documents onto the table. The sound echoed in the otherwise silent room, sharp, deliberate. Everyone in the room was watching me now. They had all underestimated me, underestimated how far I would go to destroy everything they had built. "You thought you could bury this," I said, my voice steady. "You thought you could erase my mother's name, erase my family's legacy and get away with it. But you didn't count on me. You didn't count on the truth." There was a moment of silence, a beat too long before Lucas spoke. His voice was strained, the arrogance gone. "You can't stop this, Victor," he said, his words slow, deliberate. "It's bigger than you. You're in over your head." I looked at him coldly. "You're right. It's bigger than me. But it's not bigger than the truth. And you're about to learn that." I turned to Nolan. His gun was still aimed at me, but he wasn't focused. His eyes flickered toward Lucas, then back to me. He was losing control. They all were. "Here's the deal," I said, taking a slow step forward. "You walk away now, and I won't expose everything. I'll let you go. But if you don't—" I didn't need to finish the sentence. They both knew what would happen next. A phone buzzed on the table, interrupting the moment. I didn't have to look at it to know it was bad news. The moment the buzz ended, my phone rang. It was the city. The investigation into Aldridge Group had escalated. There were more charges now, more evidence. The board had been compromised, and those in power, the ones who thought they were untouchable, were about to fall. "What is this?" Lucas said, his voice rising, his composure cracking. "What have you done?" "I didn't do anything," I said. "The truth did." I could feel the weight of my decision, but it was a weight I had to bear. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about justice. My mother's name would be cleared. My family's legacy would be redeemed. And this empire, they built it on lies. But it was going to crumble, and it would be their undoing. Suddenly, the door flew open. 2 police officers entered, their presence commanding the room. They were here for one reason. I turned to face them, my heart pounding. "Victor Hale," one of them asked, his voice firm. "Yeah," I said, my voice steady, though I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins. "You're under arrest for the charges you've filed against Aldridge Group. You have the right to remain silent. It felt surreal, the moment I had feared, yet knew was coming. The pieces were falling into place. I walked toward the officers, my shoulders straight, my head held high. I had fought for my mother, for the truth, and now it was time for me to face the consequences. The truth had set me free, but it came at a cost. As the handcuffs clicked into place, I thought of my mother, her strength, her courage. This was for her. This was for every person who had been silenced, erased, or forgotten. I'll make sure they know your name, I whispered, the words meant for no one but myself. The world outside was still, as if holding its breath. The empire that had once been untouchable was crumbling, piece by piece. It was over for them, and for me, it was just the beginning. The door slammed shut behind me, but I didn't look back. The truth had its price, but it was worth it. For the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of peace.